Hey, what's going on? This is Ed Fletcher, aka Major Sexy Pants. Can you hear me now? Um, I'm live on Facebook. This is also streaming on YouTube. Um, we are going to talk about art at Burning Man. This is a topic that has excited me for a long time, and I've wanted to see more Sacramento artists or artists in general building art for Burning Man. And I wanted to do this as a way to try to help more people get in this pipeline. This is not to replace what Burning Man has put out there and shared about how to um, build art for Burning Man and how to display art for Burning Man or how to get an honorarium for Burning Man art. This is just our smaller independent effort on behalf of myself, Sacramento Valley Spark, and the Sacramento Regional Contacts Unpaid Volunteers for Burning Man. I do not work for the Artery Department, but I am a regular volunteer at Burning Man, and we're going to try to do as much good as we can. We've got two panelists in the green room already, a third one coming. Norm Tucker, longtime burner artist, has built some art for the Playa, has also built art cars and some art in the city. Kelly Smith Cassidy is also with us, and I just went to her website and just looked at some of the amazing art she has made, and she's also done art at the Man Base as well as art out on the Playa. So let's get into it. We're also expecting Kathy Zorn to join us. She's made some art, but she's mostly been a volunteer for the Artery Department and has helped place art over the last couple of years. We'll see if she makes it into the green room before we call on her, but hoping she will join us. Hopefully most of you know what Burning Man is if you've found this broadcast, but for those who don't, it's a week-long community-created festival in the desert, or it's been in the desert. And art has been a major part of it, especially as the years have gone on. And those, because of the vast expanse of the desert, because there's so much space, you can build art on a scale that you seldom see anywhere else in the world. And it's an environment where people interact with the art and they really have a special time with the art. I'm going to play a quick video, and then we'll get into talking to our artists. We're going to give you practical information about how you can become an artist that makes art for Burning Man, and at least hear the stories of how these artists came to do what they do.
What's going on, friends? It's Ed Fletcher, aka Major Sexy Pants, and we're at Burning Man, and it's sunrise. I slept through the night, but a lot of people are just heading home or still having a good time. Let's do a lap here. Again, this is sunrise, so just a fraction of the people are out. You can see that beautiful arch there with LED screen, silver ball. It's really kind of interesting. Lots of people, lots of things out here. We're in what they call Deep Playa. Deep Playa is where lots of art is spread. The Man, the Temple, and then there's tons of other art. There are 75 art pieces that have been funded by Burning Man, at least partially, and then there are another 300 pieces that the artist didn't get an honorarium but decided to put it out here anyway, and they're at a designated location. So music is definitely part of Burning Man, but art is really at the core of what we're doing here, art and community. So this is why we do it. Times like this, when the air is perfectly still and there's no dust, just beautiful warm temperature right now, and people are just out here adventuring, dancing, enjoying the art. As I understand, around 150 people left the first day, Sunday, when it was an incredible windstorm most of the day. And it wasn't like peak winds, it was just a steady blowing of dust all day long. We persevered and got our camp set up, and now we're enjoying the fruits of the work. This mousetrap here was surprisingly exhilarating. I did get my patch. This is a construction of mousetraps, and in the center are some Burning Man patches. And you can reach in and get one at the risk of being snapped. So we started this morning in a full coat, but it's starting to warm up and I'm down to my man skin. I have to head home and get some breakfast and see what this day has in store. Major Sexy Pants, over and out.
All right. I hope that gives you a little bit of the flavor. It can be everything from strings and textiles to wood to metalwork. The scope is broad and wide. There are each year Burning Man partially funds many art pieces. In some years, it's around 70 to 80 to 100 art pieces are partially funded by Burning Man. That means you've got to raise the rest of the money to get there. The rest of the art that shows up to Burning Man, another 300 pieces of art, are self-funded. These are just people that decide that they want to bring something to Burning Man. They gather their forces and try to do that. And in some cases, Burning Man will help you with tickets or other ways to be a part of it or to help you get along. But it can be a great chore to bring art to Burning Man, and we want to talk about some of those obstacles when we bring up the artists here. So I think we're going to start with maybe we'll bring everybody in and say hello, adding Norm Tucker to the broadcast, and say hello to Kelly Smith Cassidy. Why don't you, we'll start with, we'll go ladies first. Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work and how you started making art for Burning Man.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a professional sculptor, and my dad's in the chat. My co-conspirator, my teacher, my collaborator. My parents taught me how to sculpt. Both my parents are sculptors, still in their 80s. They're still sculpting. And they taught me how to sculpt at a young age out of oxyacetylene welding equipment, welding bronze and copper pieces. And I first went to Burning Man 2017 was actually my first year. So I still feel very new. But that year I could not bring an art piece. So I brought my first art piece without any funding, just a sign for a camp. And then I just kept going. And so every year I've brought something or collaborated.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let me show one of your works here just to tease, and we can talk about some of the other ones later on.
Yeah, so this is called Cru Hudal, which is Welsh for magical being, and this is for 2018 iRobot. And they wanted robots to go around the man pavilion in all of the clock directions, and then they had panels inside, art panels inside. So I proposed art panels, 3 art panels, and a robot, and they chose a robot, and I didn't think I'd get chosen. This was made out of wood. I never ever carved in wood in my life, but I had to learn, basically.
Yeah, I think you'll hear that from a lot of artists, is that you learn so much from doing, and you really kind of get thrown to the wolves there. Norm, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience making art for Burning Man?
My name is Norm Tucker. I live in Auburn, California here. I have a small iron and blacksmith shop here. That's my background is welding and hand forged traditional blacksmithing. So that's always been with me. I went to Burning Man for the first time in 2011. And after having probably 3 or 4 years of working with people who went to Burning Man, because I was kind of the go-to person locally to help them weld together their project or build an art car for them. I did several art cars before I even went myself. And when I got to Burning Man in 2011, and I showed up in the middle of the night, and I got to the Esplanade and saw the Trojan horse, if anybody remembers that, that blew my mind. I said, that's like, this is it. This is why I'm glad I came to see stuff like this. And it didn't take me long to start working on the idea. As the next year I go, I think like most people, I've met a lot of people, their second year burn, like, I got to do something, I got to be a part of this. And so I was the same way. I thought, I got to do something. But what happened was, after the horse was burnt down, and it was a couple of days later, it was still on fire, still smoldering, I felt I had to get some parts and pieces out of that thing, out of that burnt pile, and take them back to my shop and maybe pound them into a bracelet or some kind of jewelry. And I did that. I was out there with a bucket, and I was picking up all the bolts and big washers and stuff that was there. And a guy came out from the middle of nowhere, really, and he was the Leave No Trace lead for the Trojan horse. And he had a heck of a job to do, because it was a big pile of ash and debris and everything. And he wanted to know what I was interested in having all these pieces for. And I told him a little bit about what I do. And so right away he said, geez, would you mind if I gathered all the steel up and put it in crates and brought it to your shop? There's a lot of story to be told between all that, but I'm trying to encapsulate what really went down, the highlights. And I agreed. We shared email, phone numbers, and the Playa promises. And I went, oh yeah, sure. I'm sure I'll hear from you later, right? Well, it was 3 months later. He called me up, and he lives up in Vancouver, Washington. And he said, I'm on my way. I got the truck loaded up. I got all the stuff that I was able to dig out of there that was metal anyway, and I'm going to bring it to you. And if you don't mind making I agreed to make a memorial for a friend of his who had passed away on the Playa here. He was one of the part of the build crew for the Trojan horse. I never met the guy, but I said, okay, I'll do that. I'll do something anyway. So he shows up to my shop with a truckload of stuff, and we threw all the pieces and parts on the floor of the shop. And I had probably more than half of my camp showed up to participate in this, because he gave me a couple of days notice. And we were trying to decide what to make with all this burnt, charred metal, twisted and everything, and try to come up with some idea for a memorial for this guy. Somebody in the background, and I do believe it was Kathleen Hoffman. She was in my camp at the time. We're kindergarten camp. And she said, why don't we make a phoenix? And that just was like the most perfect thing that I could have heard, because it was coming out of the ashes of the Trojan horse. It just made sense. So, it took about 4 months to make the thing. Daniel Skirblaw, if anybody knows Daniel, he did all the flames. I did all the welding and the fabrication, and everybody in my camp came and either pounded out the feathers and or held things. And I taught a lot of people how to weld that year too. It was kind of a fun thing. And so that was how the Phoenix became. And there's a real emotional story after that, the backstory on it, really. It took a life of its own, but I'll just leave it at that, in the interest of time here. But if anybody ever wants to hook up with me and find out the rest of the story as it related to the family of this, that we made this memorial for, it's pretty emotional. And sometimes I even throw a tear or two when I try to tell the story about this guy, Harley Payne, who passed away on the playa. Yeah, so there it is. That picture right there, I think, was at one of the Bernal equinoxes, I think, up in Grass Valley. I think we had a Bernal equinox up there. Because after 2012, we brought it out on 2012. The very next year, we managed to get it done in time. It went on a road trip. It was like, wow, this is the coolest thing. And we took it to Reno a couple times for the afterburn they had up there, and several other events that we took it to. And then finally, we had to retire the thing. It took so much effort each time. And we burnt a lot of propane each time we used it. It was quite cool, actually. And it was a communal effort. It was about 8 or 10 different people that participated in making this thing. I was the lead on it because I was the one that basically knew how to put it all together. But everybody had something to do with making this Phoenix.
Thank you for sharing that story, because I knew of the Phoenix, but I didn't ever really hear the story before. So it's really good to hear the story behind it and how it came from the Trojan horse. Really appreciate you sharing that. We're going to get back to you and share some of your art cars and some of the things you've done since then. But I wanted to pull Kelly back into here and start sharing a little bit of advice for people. What would you tell somebody who says, I've seen the art at Burning Man, I've been blown away, I want to do that too. How do I get started?
Well, the first thing you have to do is get on the Burning Man journal so you can be aware of any kind of proposal notification that they put out, call for entry type of thing. That's the first place I would start. Next thing I would do is just hone in on your skills, because if you want to be a collaborator on any art piece, it's really a good idea. You're going to learn as you go, but it's a really good idea to hone in on some skills. Like Norm I'm assuming you are an electrical welder. I'm an oxyacetylene welder. And if you have a specific skill that's really useful towards a collaboration, that's really a good boon to have something that is going to be helpful towards a team. And then I would also suggest that you stick with your principles of what you value and what you like and what you want to bring and your vision, and collect photos online or magazines or ideas, and have a file on your computer for ideas that you might want to incorporate. And those can change a lot. And just keep talking to people in your community to see who might want to help you. And fundraising is also very important. So always have that from the very beginning, to understand fundraising really well, understand the process, and learn how to draw and how to propose. That's really important. That's something I would say. Also, don't be afraid. Like, if you're not an artist, I hear a lot of people saying, I really want to bring something, but I'm not an artist. But I think everyone does have something in them. Either it's mechanical, or if they have the desire, they're probably artistic to begin with. They just don't think that they have it in them. And a lot of us don't think that we're going to get the proposal, that we're not going to get accepted, but we do. Or if we don't, we make stuff anyway. We bring stuff anyway. Just start, just build, just start making it. Make a model. Make a model. That's really important too. Make a model first, and then just keep going. But don't let anyone distract you away from your vision and what you want to do. You can have collaborators. That's great. But just start. Just one foot in front of the other. Just start. That'd be my advice. But get on those email lists first of all, so you can be aware of any kind of opportunities.
That's a good advice there, because there's a whole schedule to Burning Man, and you've got to be months and months and months ahead of the game. The honorarium deadline is in about a week, so you should at that point have turned in drawings. What's in an honorarium, like, or you have to have a budget, you've got to have drawings, you got to have like the whole scope of the thing, and that's before the real application begins, right?
Yeah, so it's the LOI, so it's a letter of intent, and that's the first thing. And it's usually a little bit later, but they're doing it at the same time as the temple proposal. I think they're just giving more time for us to propose something, to have more time in the process. So for the first part, it's the LOI, which is a letter of intent, and literally this can just be a drawing, just like a simple drawing. It's nice to have a more elaborate drawing or a model or something, but really they want to see what your idea is first. And there's about 800 to 1,000 people that apply for that. And then the second part is you see if you get to the second round. There's only 2 rounds. So first round is if you get through, then they'll choose about 200 people. They'll invite them to do a further process. And that's where the budgeting comes in. And you can't ask during the LOI like what kind of budget you think it is, but during the second process, the second round, you really lock it in. Like, this is my Google sheet of the whole thing. Like, this is my pages of budget, how much I think every screw is going to cost, and all of that, because they want to see that.
So the letter of intent, can be a little bit last minute. It's really just kind of the idea. And then the actual application is where you got to tell all the goods, right?
I've heard from Katie Hazard and Crimson Rose that they actually read through what your design idea is. Like, they read the paragraphs of what your philosophy is on the piece. That
Okay.
They really do take that into consideration. That's really important. And then I've heard literally, and this is from the horse's mouth, literally I've heard of people just proposing drawings on napkins and turning those in. Taking a picture of a simple drawing that they made on a napkin. But of course, this was an artist that they already had done stuff before. So, but I wouldn't suggest that.
Yeah, Picasso's napkin is different than your napkin. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Norm, do you have any secrets for getting selected when you're applying for processes like this, or getting started in general?
Well, I've not applied for an honorarium or any financial assistance from Burning Man. I've only done the Phoenix, really, which was quite large, and it was self-funded. I paid for all that. And only lately I've been focusing in on art cars anyway. So, I would like to be a part of something big, but, I'm just a one-man operation, really. And if anybody has something really big and grand, even if Kelly Cassidy there wants to get involved, I'm a retired guy. I think I'm pretty skilled. I do MIG and TIG welding, oxyacetylene. I can do that. I haven't done it in so long that I don't even use it anymore. I only use my torches to bend stuff. I don't braze anymore. It's just not handy enough for me. But as far as getting started on this public art piece that I have, I think I sent you a picture of that. That was really the first time that I had to apply and describe and, hope to get selected and go through the motions of all that. It was pretty interesting for me because it was the first time I'd ever done it. And it was a public art piece. It had nothing to do with Burning Man. I would say that I was inspired by Burning Man when I created it because it's a pretty big thing.
You want me to put that up for you?
It was, pardon me?
You mean to put it on the screen?
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe people can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, so this was a public art piece that I did in Auburn here. It's in front of a public apartment complex that they wanted some art. The Placer Art Commission sent out a letter of was a call to artists is what it's called, really. And I had no expectations that I would be chosen for this thing. But I think what helped me, and maybe to help answer your question as to what to do, is I provided a pretty detailed explanation of my intent and my abilities. I mean, they wanted to know everything about me before they spent a lot of money on that thing. It was quite expensive. And then good drawings. Luckily I have a brother who lives in Miami who's a graphic artist, and he's quite good. And I even had to fly out there just to sit him down and have him help me make renditions with conceptual drawings of the way the apartment complex was going to be built, and so that really helped sell the deal. And even though I wasn't really expecting to be picked because I was just a small guy here in a small town, I was up against some pretty high-end artists otherwise who had done a lot more than I had ever done. I was quite shocked when I was picked, really. But I think the fact that I had a good idea and good explanation, a good story behind it, and very good drawings. I mean, so that they could really see what it's going to look like. I mean, it wasn't just a picture or something drawn on a pizza box or something, which I think is where it started anyway. Then I took that pizza box to Florida, but it was really helpful for them to see what it might look like at the end, instead of just some pictures that didn't have any scale. And so it was the reason for the feathers, by the way, is because they wanted to have, it was a very subtle inference of wanting something that would reflect the Native American presence in Northern California. And so the 3 feathers was really because of the 3 main tribes that inhabited Northern California. There were plenty of other little ones, but the main ones, and I didn't describe, it was just representative of the Indian presence, Native American presence, and they liked that idea. I don't know what other people proposed. I know it could have been just up to the artist to decide what they wanted to make, and for some apparently a good reason, they chose the feathers because it made more sense to what they wanted. So maybe a little bit of luck and possibly some good research on my part, but yeah, you don't get them all, as I understand. So, but at least I got that one.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And to jump back into the opportunities with bringing art to Burning Man, there's the honorarium, there's the just bring it yourself, and you ask Burning Man, can I place this out on the playa? And they select a place for you and put it on the map, so to speak. There's bringing art to your camp. And there's also some opportunities associated with the man or the man base, or that Burning Man is curating. And Kelly, you've done a couple of those. Tell us about the other piece you had associated with the man.
Sure. I think I can actually share my screen if you want.
Oh, gonna let you? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, cool. So and I gotta allow it to share.
So it popped her out somehow, and now it's just Norm and I. I assume she'll try to log back in. And this is the picture she was gonna share, I think. It's a pavilion around the man base, or a parkette. So let's see if she gets back in. I don't see her yet. Oh, here she comes. All right, she's back again.
Sorry about that.
All right. Were you going to show this the parkette?
I was going to show that. Here we go. So yeah, I made that out of there was a proposal that they put out. Again, it's really important that you get on those, all of those information about the, oh, hold on, let me stop sharing because she shared it. So it's really important to get on all of those email lists and the notifications, because I got just a little blurb on an email that said, we have a design competition. It was outside of the honoraria program. This is for Man Base. and they wanted to have these little parklets. Now in the San Francisco area, they invented this new thing called parklets, which is basically taking up like a couple of parking spots and make a little park out of it. And what they realized at Burning Man is they didn't have a civic park, or kind of like an area where people can have a civic gathering space other than center camp, which is kind of served as that purpose, but they wanted something that was more like a purpose of gathering space, just to get together and talk and use it for whatever you want to around the Man Pavilion. So what they decided to do is put a contest out for a parklet. And I designed this pavilion in the shape of the city of Black Rock City, because I find that so emblematic. I find it very emblematic of our culture. That whole symbol of the city and the layout that Rod had done is just so important to me. So from above, it's 3 amphitheaters, and it looked like the city layout. And during the day, they were all white, and then at night they lit up. And so anyway, it's for use of the city to use how they want and how they purposed it. And so it was really fun to see how each person, each group that was in the pavilion, how they used it. Some people used it as like their grandstand for philosophical or religious speeches, which I found very interesting. Some people were singing in there, and I made those amphitheaters so that they were perfectly acoustic. So when you stood in the middle, you can actually hear a really great echo, and people thought I put speakers or some sort of mics in there so that people can hear your amplified voice, but it was just designed in a way that it became a true amphitheater. So when you're standing in the middle of them, you can hear all the voices. But anyway, the process for the Man Pavilion, man base work, the way that it is at Burning Man is that there's 3 different entities, really. 2 of them that are associated within the art department. The art department has full control over man base and honoraria, temple, center camp work, keyhole work, mutant vehicles, etc. But when it comes to man base art, it is its own bubble. It's almost like their own city, their own culture, their own people. It's really its own bubble within the Burning Man entity. And the honoraria program is separate from that. So within that man base program, they're all contract artists, and you have to be invited right now in these days to get even a chance to propose anything, especially if you want to propose what the man base will look like or art for the man base. And usually you're just invited as an artist. It's in contract, so you actually sign a contract with Burning Man, and they give you the full funding that they think that you will need for the man base. So I got this contract. Again, it was the 2nd year in a row I'm making work for the man base. And the piece was, they gave me $10,000 to make these pavilions. I spent an additional around $8,000 of my own money and a little bit of funding from outside sources. I hate fundraising, so I raised about $3,000 outside of that. So in total, this thing cost a lot more money than what they gave me, which is usually the case. So in the end, I did not go to Burning Man for free this year, that year. Which that is what people assume, like you get all these tickets and stuff and it's free, but nope. A lot of the fundraising also comes from your own team, but we can get to that later if you want. But that's what the man base is about. It's its own entity, its own bubble, contract artists, and the people who are building the man base and pavilion are part volunteer, but most, if not maybe 3/4 of these people are actually contractors that are flown in and brought in to actually make the man base. Because if you don't have a man, you don't have Burning Man. So that's the thing that's funded fully. It's the most expensive thing out there. And then next is the temple, is the second most funded thing, expensive thing out there. And that does come out of the honoraria, the 1.3 million. $100,000 goes towards the temple. But the man base is a completely different entity, its own funding and everything.
Okay. And they also have opportunities for people to build things at the 9 o'clock plaza or the 3 o'clock plaza. So you've got to be plugged in and look for those opportunities. I wonder if we could talk a little bit more about the challenges and the extra logistics that go into like bringing art to Burning Man because you can't just run to the store and grab what you need. You've got to be fully ready to go. Either it's fully built or you're going to do some assembly on playa, but you got to have everything you need. Talk about some of those extra things you need to think about when you're building art for display at Burning Man. Who wants to
Any
start?
of us? Oh my God, the challenges are ridiculous. You don't think of all of the things. Transportation costs. I'm very good friends with one of the temple makers, and transportation's around $30,000 for the temple. It's expensive. And so you got to think about your transportation costs and the size of the trailers being around 8 to 8.5 feet wide for flatbeds. Got to think about your piece and how big it is to fit in there. And the material costs during COVID was really expensive for wood. So I felt really bad for, we lost our host. I felt really bad for the people who were building the temple and how much it costs to make that piece. The 2019 for Jordy's temple was the year just before COVID, and wood was relatively still inexpensive. But then the following years, if we did have a Burning Man during those COVID years, the wood was so astronomical that it would have cost maybe triple the amount that it usually does for temples. So that's one thing to consider is material costs. Or you could be like Norm and go and try to find some materials on playa, which I think was brilliant. It's a really good idea to recycle those things. Cost is always more than you think. It's always going to be more than you think. There's always little things, always something. And then you might have some drama with your crew. That is something you have to delegate with your crew. If you have more than 20 people, there's bound to be some kind of drama. You got to have somebody to delegate for certain things so that you can just concentrate on making your piece and making your art as the visionary if you have a large crew. And you delegate certain tasks such as fundraising and outreach, or strong arm men to like say, hey, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to go. I've had to fire 2 people off of my crew before. One for harassment towards the women. Got to watch out for these things. And another one for just going against Burning Man principles. And we had to be very, very strong about that and say that we couldn't allow those things. Some other challenges besides that is when you go out there beforehand, knowing that you are going to be building out there. It can be tough beforehand. Build week is really fun. It's really fun when no one's there and you see the city grow up in front of your eyes. It's really fun. But there's extra challenges there with food for your crew as well. Another challenge is making things modular. I think I mentioned a little bit of that with the trailer, making sure that are modular. I am learning that I will probably never, ever build a round thing again. I made a big head, tried to make it as smooth as I possibly could. Never going to do that. You see a lot of pieces out there that have a lot of geometric spaces, and they put those into a computer program to make flat panels for you in a geometric style. And I know why they do that now too, because it looks cool and looks modern, but it's also much easier to build in that fashion. Unless you are a really good builder and you make things out of metal very, very smooth and round. That's why you see a lot of pieces are flat spaces with flat panels. So you want to really keep that in mind, especially if you're a woodworker. Just flat spaces. You just want to keep that really tight. Let's see. I think that's all I can think of right now as far as the challenges. Keep in touch with the artery. You will be, if you are an honorary artist, you will be given a project manager, and they will be in contact with you all the time in order to make sure that you are on track. So that's really helpful to make sure that all the little problems are really taken care of. Fundraising is just it's a huge hurdle.
We could have a whole video just on fundraising, because especially you're doing some of these projects are $40,000-$50,000.
Yeah.
Norm, do you want to add something about the challenges there? And then we're going to bring in our closer, Kathy Zorn, aka Glimmer, who's worked for Artery for many years.
You know, I can really only speak to the small little project we did, which was the Phoenix. I have yet to be able to do something really large that I would have to try to get funding from Burning Man, or big enough to where I needed multiple tractor trailers. I'm always impressed by that, by how do people get stuff there. But the only challenge that I had with the Phoenix really was having everybody on board with the same idea. I had the idea to make the thing a certain way, but we all came together. It turned out well. Each of us had a different part of it. Propane was a big deal. Getting the propane up there, I think logistics was probably my biggest problem. It was such a big art piece, bigger than we thought it was going to be. Actually, it turned out to be about 16 feet tall and giant and on fire. You know, it just like it didn't start out that way. So we had to bring it up there in multiple vehicles, and you know, we're just a small crew with small trailers and you know, little travel trailers and stuffing parts and pieces in the trunk of cars. And it was getting it there was because it was our first shot, our first time doing anything at all there. But we had a propane company who was really cool about it. After there was a story done in the local paper, the propane company said, "Yeah, we'll give you the propane. You're taking it to Burning Man, that'd be great." But getting it to Burning Man was a big deal because our little cargo trailer that we had over 1,000 pounds of propane in multiple 125 gallon tanks got 2 flat tires on the way to Burning Man. That's always fun. You know, it took us a couple of days to get there with the propane, and you know, so you run into stuff like this, and just try to be prepared with good equipment. Because it was just an off the top project, we didn't plan. The next one I do certainly will be different. I'm looking forward to actually doing something bigger and better because I've been to Burning Man 11 years now, and you know, I think it's time to get involved. I'm retired, so I can use my skills if anybody wants to use them. I've got a pretty neat space, and I look forward to making something large. But the challenges I had really weren't that bad. In fact, when I got to Burning Man, they were so excited. It was going to be put out on the playa somewhere, maybe even Deep Playa. But as I understand it, it was one of the first plazas. It was placed at the 730 Plaza that year in 2012. And DPW came out. They dug big trenches for us, and we ran our gas and power underground all the way to our camp. And we didn't have any challenges really. It was pretty smooth. But I can imagine that you do something much larger. It has its own own challenges. But yeah,
okay. Well, thank you. I'm glad we've got these two different perspectives on there. But I want to bring in a third perspective. Kathy Zorn, aka Glimmer, has been a volunteer at the Artery. So she has participated in placing and orienting hundreds of artists. She's also brought some art herself to the playa, and I'm sure we've made a lot of things that she wanted to correct. So I'm going to let her set the record straight on things that we said prior to her joining, and then wanted to get her thoughts on where people should get started in this odyssey, and then we're going to end it by talking about why people should want to bring art to Burning Man. So Kathy, first correct the record and give us some thoughts about bringing art to Burning Man.
Well, there's not a whole lot to correct. I think that a lot of what's been said is very valuable. It's definitely jumping on the journal and getting to find out those deadlines, and when those special opportunities come up, like around the man base, is a great way to start. Having an idea and sticking with it, having a lead, is going to make your job much easier. There probably are a few things that would be helpful to know, such as since 2012, the rules have changed about what is placed art at Burning Man. For example, we had a lovely piece out there called La Victrola, which was a old-fashioned record player that sat on top of a container that was a performance hall. And no longer does Burning Man allow performance installations out on the playa. Those are meant to be in camp. So definitely read the rules that are posted and be aware of those changes. If you are a first-time artist coming out to Burning Man, I would say find your niche. Where are you best at? For example, small pieces, desktop pieces, two-dimensional pieces are best served in center camp, which is outside of the artery system, but a wonderful place to have small pieces of art be displayed, as well as all the murals that go around center camp are artists who have been approved to do art. If you are a little bit larger piece, but not grandiose, there's such thing as called the Art Park, which is run by Runester. And it's a cordoned off area for small art installations, think garden size, where you can kind of wander in and out the small art installations and they don't get lost out in the desert. This is a great opportunity to kind of check out the art experience at Burning Man, see what it's like to be a placed artist, go through the process without it being this arduous experience. If you are going to be bringing out a larger piece, especially if it's going to have flame effects, the good news is you don't have to haul your own propane out there anymore. Nowadays, Burning Man has pretty tight controls over fuel, and you arrange your fuel to be managed through them. So that can be wood burning, that can be propane, but they want you to use their contractors and have that be managed so that you don't have tons and tons of fuel at your campsite, perhaps causing issues in the city. What else? My experience has been as artery that usually honorariums are multiple year artist, meaning it's not your first time out the door, that you are known to Burning Man. They invest so much resources into helping those honorarium artists, from tickets to trenching to heavy equipment. They've actually purchased heavy equipment for an honorarium piece. That's how dedicated they are to helping artists with their art. So they want you to be a known entity to them. If it's your first time at Burning Man, you probably are going to have to count on it being self-funded. If it's 15 feet or taller, it has to be signed off by several agencies. So that's another cost to take into consideration. I tend to encourage first-time artists to keep it below 15, and to try to keep it as safe as possible for the participants. Amazing to me, participants have an actual, what would I say, a vision quest where their goal is to climb everything at Burning Man. And they have games and rules and competitions. And so plan on your art installation being climbed unless you have clearly tagged that it would be dangerous to self or the art. We can talk a little bit about vandalism. It's a challenge at Burning Man. Yes, art does get vandalized. And so keep that in mind when you're putting things out there. We recommend generators get locked down. If you really do not want your art to be marked, usually putting a sign up will help, but it's no guarantee. And that's just something to take into consideration. As one artist, I said, it's a gift to Burning Man. Once I surrender it to the desert, it's up to them to decide what to do with it. And that's one attitude. Other attitudes are, this is a piece of art that I wish to take out and tour around the country. Please be respectful of it. What else can I share?
Thank you for raising that point about having your piece engineered, because if you're hoping that the piece has a life afterwards and maybe you're going to put it in a park or someplace else, they're going to ask for that engineering information. So that's an additional cost if you're going big and you want to have it in a public space afterwards.
If it's over a certain feet, you have to have an engineer check it out.
Right. Yes, but even a smaller
wasn't that way when I brought the Phoenix
in a
there.
Civic Plaza, they're going to want to know that you had an engineer check that piece out, because no city is going to allow you to put a piece of art in their plaza that they might deem will be dangerous. And so that is a piece to think about going forward. We've seen some really amazing pieces at Burning Man, but they're made out of wood and they get desiccated on the playa, and then suddenly they're unsafe for city presentation. So thinking about what is the life after your art installation. I'm old school. We started going to Burning Man in 2004, where we pretty much burned almost everything down. And now we've shifted to the other end with environmental concerns and and artists being desirous of having their art installations touring around the country. And so we see less and less flame effects or fire effects or combustible art installations. If that's a route you choose to take, do know that there are additional costs and complications and registration anytime you add fire to your art installation.
That was another challenge, Ed, about after Burning Man. Like, where does this piece go? It wasn't until my second piece that I realized, oh, this is why people burn their piece. My first piece was burned, and that's the one piece I really wanted to keep. But I had no choice. But after Burning Man, it's like, where does this go? And Ed has done such a great job in really trying to help artists find places for their work afterwards. My pieces are in backyards, and it's a sad case, but that's really, really important to think about, like Kathy said. And I think, is it just 1% or 2% of pieces out there are now burned? Something like that.
It's pretty low. We had, I think, close to 400 art installations, and I think we burned 8 of them. We were supposed to burn 9, 10 of them, but unless you didn't hear, there was rain on the playa, and so some pieces had to get taken back home again. Which brings up another point. Getting it out there is one thing. Getting it apart and back home is an entire different story. So as much effort as you have in your build team, you also need to make sure you have a strike team who's going to help you take it apart and sweep the area for MOOP and make sure that you leave the desert as pristine as when you arrived, if not more so.
So let's try to end on a positive note. What are some of the the benefits? Why should people want to make big art and bring it to Burning Man? Who wants to go first? Anyone?
I'll go first. It's because I see these artists, and I can tell you,
it's a great feeling.
There is such
I'll say it that way.
joy.
Yeah, I wanted to do it from the moment I saw. Yeah, that too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's such joy.
Who's talking?
These artists who come forward and bring their art to Artery, and we see their faces. Sometimes they're absolutely dead exhausted, but they're so excited. They want to give this gift to the community. The feelings that they have, the appreciation that they receive from the participants who come around and see it, and the art tours that come around time and time again. I hear artists say, wow, it was one of the most fundamentally powerful experiences they've ever had at Burning Man. And some of them are hooked, and I see them every single year. Every year they bring out a piece of art because it is such an amazing experience for them to give to the city in this way. And they get so much out of it just from the intrinsic experience of being an artist at Burning Man.
I'd like to add to that, if I can, illustrate that with a story. And that is just perfect, Kathy, what you said, because with my third piece, with Baba Yaga, when I helped with Baba Yaga, I got a sense of the feeling of how people found joy in seeing the piece. It was so interactive. And I played the witch too. I worked on Baba Yaga and I played the witch in there. And people coming up and just the joy of interacting, and that was just one of the coolest things I think I've ever experienced at Burning Man, was being the witch in Baba Yaga house actually. But when I made the pavilion for the man base, I was dead tired. Like Kathy says, you get to the Artery, you're sitting there, you're waiting in turn to talk to somebody there about your placement and etc. And you're just so tired, and you think to yourself through the whole process. And when you're there, even, you're like, why the hell do I do this? Why do I do this? Why do I dedicate so much of my time into this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And then your piece is out there, and you might be sleeping for like 15 hours. I remember my first piece, for the robot piece, I slept probably a solid 20 hours. I was up for 75 hours. I was just working so hard on installing this piece. You're very tired. You're very worn out. You're going to be thinking, why am I doing this? Why do I keep doing this? When the pavilion went up, I slept for a long time. And then my crew said, you have to go out and see your piece. I'm like, no, I just don't want to go. I didn't want to go and see. I'm just like, I was done. Right. I was like, I don't think I'll do this again. And they really convinced me to go out there. It was nighttime. And then the first plaza, people were doing like some sort of talk. And the second plaza, there was like Disney princesses dressed up singing Disney songs. And then the third plaza, I go out there and they're doing this one game. They're speech. And one person goes up and they do something. And this guy gets up there and he starts singing Bohemian Rhapsody after a 5-second, like thinking about what he wants to do. He starts singing Bohemian Rhapsody. And there was all these people on this pavilion. There was probably like 50 of us there. And they start singing this. And then the whole group just starts joining in on Bohemian Rhapsody. I was there with my crew. I am tired. I am exhausted. I'm wondering if I'll ever do this again. And they start singing one of my favorite songs in the world. And I swear I just started bawling. I'm just crying. And somebody with me was like, she built this. And I thought, oh, cool. They saw me crying. They thought I was probably high or something or drunk, but I was crying out of just sheer, like, this is why I do this. This is why I do this. I do this for the excitement of the people coming in and what it brings to others, this togetherness. And for that first piece, the robot, I came up there and there was a guy fondling my robot. He was an older man in his 70s. He's fondling this robot. And then I noticed that he was blind. And he was part of the blind burners group. And his son came up to me and his dad is crying. And he said, are you the woman that made this? I said, yeah, I carved this. And he's like, I said, I probably wouldn't allow people to touch it like this. But, and then the son was like, my mom died several years ago. This is the first woman he's touched. And I just was like, okay, that's another reason why I do this. And just inspiring other artists to get out there and just do it. I've been a sculptor since I was a teenager and I came from a sculpting family, but don't let that stop you from your vision of what you have. Because I've seen people that they think they have no artistic talent or anything, but they have a vision. And let me tell you, once you start a Burning Man project, once you start an art project out there, there's going to be people knocking on your door to help you. It's amazing what this community does to want to help you, especially if you get a grant. They really want to help you. But it is unbelievable the feeling that you get when you see people interact. Getting it out there and seeing it up, yeah, sure. But when people interact with it, that's where it's at.
I would agree.
I think that's a really great story to end on. I, as a burning culture leader in Sacramento, I get people who come up to me all the time and they're like, I want to help on a project. Where are the Sacramento art projects? And I didn't have anything to say the last couple years. We've done the Great Train Wreck in Sacramento a couple years ago. Unfortunately, Red Vixen couldn't make it to this gathering tonight. She did send some suggested thoughts, but I think we've covered most of what she would have advised as well. But back to my point of, I'd love to have more Sacramento artists making art or teams of artists making art so that our community can rally behind you and support you. And then, it starts with that drawing on the napkin and ends with you crying when people embrace what you've made. So I really hope that more people start that journey, start drawing on the napkin, go to burningman.org and get on all the newsletters so that you can know the timing. Get out there and make stuff, and let's change the world. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Norm. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Kathy. And thank you, everybody who watched both live and in future time. Thanks a lot. Ed Fletcher, a.k.a. Major Sexy Pants.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for bringing
Thanks,
us together.
Ed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.